What was the angriest you have seen a teacher get at a student? In middle school there was fundraising contest and the winning student got to pie a teacher of their choosing. Well, Corey was a little lot excited and slammed that pie into our math teacher's face. Broke his nose. His reaction was an immediate, "What the frick, you little crap," in front of the entire school. I accidentally knocked a small glass figurine off my teacher's desk. This teacher was already known for being a bit unstable and harsh. I was terrified, but to my surprise she just ran out the classroom. Few seconds later we hear her release a scream of pure rage. She came back and composed. I was surprised to say the least. I took off my jacket by a teacher's desk and accidentally knocked an old coffee cup to the ground and it shattered. Turns out her son made it for her when he was a little kid. She wasn't thrilled with me. Psycho kid in 4th year attacked the teacher with scissors. The teacher wrestled the scissors away, then dragged the kid down the hall by his hair. Not my story, but my dad's. He's English and went to an all-boys school. One of the teachers had a really bad stammer that the boys would make fun of, under their breath or out of earshot. Dad said that the guy must have been aware of it, but nothing overt ever happened in class. I guess at the start of term he was taking attendance. J. John. S. Myth. The boys answered respectfully with, "Present," until he got to one boy who answered in an even more severe stammer. P. Present. The teacher looked up from his list, red in the face, and swooped over to the toe rag that had answered and boxed him hard on both ears, and the boy began to cry. "Sir, he really does have a stammer too." The kid was new and no one had told the teacher that he had a severe stammer. My dad says he's never seen anyone look so horrified in his entire life as that teacher did when he heard that. The teacher apologized to the lad and after that the teacher took him under his wing. He was a wicked smart kid, so the teacher made sure to call on him in class and wait patiently while the kid gave his answers. Dad said that he never heard so much as a snicker from anyone about the teacher's stammering for the rest of his schooling. I'd be willing to bet that teacher and that student were probably very close for a long time after that. I had a friend in class who got aggravated at a science teacher and said, "I hope your kid is born with webbed feet." Teacher immediately got in my friend's face and screamed, "Don't ever talk about someone's unborn baby." Grabbed him by the neck and escorted him to principal's office. The next day teacher, apologized to the whole class for the outburst. Had a math teacher get red in the face screaming at me. I wrote 4 equals a fraud on the board before class. She comes in and starts screaming WHO did this over and over. I raised my hand and she started screaming about how it wasn't funny. Then told me I wasn't going to pass the class or get anywhere in life. I had an A in the class. Joke's on her though, because I work at McDonald's. Wait, what? This thread makes me feel like all the teachers except mine are crazy freaks who have no control over their actions. WTF. I once saw a teacher shove a student backwards into a chair. The student shouted, "You can't do that." The teacher said, "Well, I just did it, didn't I?" Back in high school, 1970s, a student shoved a teacher and the teacher punched him in the face. The teacher took a leave of absence and then returned to teaching again. The golden years. A classmate of mine was cornered by a teacher on a flight of stairs and had his nipples tweaked. To be fair, he was a jit. I could just picture the teacher staring angrily after him one day, plotting to corner him and tweak his nipples in revenge. My female English teacher bitch slapped a guy back and forth with an Oxford English dictionary in class. To be fair, he was being kind of a douche. She had just had a miscarriage and was pretty depressed, but he kept being a jerk in class. After that, no one messed with her again. While I didn't talk to him personally, I understand my history teacher was fairly pissed off when the wall 3 feet away from his head exploded after a student put a bomb in it. That was long before the internet, so I'm not sure if events like that just didn't get the same kind of publicity, or if they really didn't happen that much, but it had quite an impact on our school. Lot of attempted murder in this thread. We had this kid in my class, Coffee, from Africa. He also happened to be my neighbor and good friend. We sat in the corner by the door with some other people and had a great time. Coffee used to get up and sneak out of class to go talk to the teacher next door and goof off. He never got busted, but one day the teacher looked up and said, "Hey, where'd Coffee go?" And we told him. And this girl beside me goes, "Hey, when he comes back in, will you act like you're really mad at him? Like just go berserk." And the teacher just grinned. So like 4 minutes later he sneaks back in, and our corner coughs. The signal. So he missed her. R turns around. "Coffee, where were you?" I was next to. "What were you doing?" I was talking to Mrs. "So you think you can just get up from my class and walk out whenever you want?" Number. Do you think this is a joke? Do you want to get suspended? Do you want to go to the office? No please, I'm so sore. This probably went on for another 30 seconds, and every single person in the class was grinning at him and just giggling. And finally the teacher stops and laughs, and pats him on the back, and the whole class roars in laughter. We told him what we did, and Coffee with this big brown African eyes is shaking, and in his deep French accent he's just like, "I was wondering why you were all smiling at me." I said to myself, this is no laughing matter. It was probably the funniest crap I've ever seen. I was getting toward the end of this whole thread, and I'm glad to finally see a happy story. My high school English teacher found out that during vocab tests students would put the study sheet under their desks on top of their backpacks and cheat. She came in crying, yelling, and slamming books down, saying that cheating was her #1 rule breaker and couldn't believe we do that and how disappointed in us she was. I was not one of those who cheated. She told us all that none of what happened left that room, so she could basically do the same to the next class afterwards, since this was happening in multiple classes she taught. A student excused himself to go to the bathroom, and 10 minutes later our teacher gets a call from another teacher asking about what had just happened. She blew her gasket and punished the entire class, cheaters and non-cheaters alike, by making us write a 12-page paper for our final instead of watching a movie and chilling out like previously planned. The old Netflix and chill. Junior high science teacher. A week or two prior she had gotten a call that her sister died in a fire after a car accident, so obviously she left for a week to deal with all the crap. Well, when she came back some butthole kid was being a pain in the butt as always, so she yelled at him a bit more than usual and sent him to the principal's office, and as he's packing his things he said, "I hope you die in a fire like your sister." The teacher freaking lost it. She starts screaming at him, calling him a little sucker and all this crap. She tried to throw a chair at him, but me and some of the other big kids kind of held her back while the kid is standing there laughing, so some of the other kids kicked him out and dragged him to the principal's office. And after we calmed the teacher down she ran out of the room bawling, and we never saw her again. That's fricked up. I hope that kid knows what a piece of crap he was that day. The most furious I've seen was actually at me, and for such a stupid reason. It was an IT class, and when I was 11, in one lesson, I kept scrolling down on Excel to see how far it would go. The teacher spotted me, and he went ballistic. Either he was making an example of me on one of our first lessons with him, or he had had a really crap day. In year 10 we had this awesome, young, mid-20s English teacher that was proper on the level with the kids. I hated English, but he really got us to engage with it. One less he was reading the book we were studying, hopping and jumping around, acting out the scene and doing the voices. 2 kids were talking whilst he was doing it and he freaking lost it, and rightly so. He started shouting at them about disrespecting him and the other students, how he was trying to do something nice and fun and all they could do was talk through it. He didn't get violent, but you could probably hear him the other side of our school. Later that year he died in a car crash, and everyone that was in his class had to line up outside the school as the funeral procession went by. It was humbling seeing the kids that used to frick around, wear their uniform incorrectly and generally not give a frick about school just for those few minutes smarten themselves up and behave. There was genuine respect shown that day, and all I could think was why not everyone could have shown him the same respect in his lessons, because the bloke really deserved it. Had a music teacher in grade 6 that everyone disliked. She has a ridiculous penchant for ABBA and was forcing us to play ABBA and ABBA only. After 3 months of this we were all going a little stir crazy, and during one lesson in particular she could not pull us back together. Her usual tactic was to point someone out and ask them to play their part solo, so everyone else had to be quiet. We didn't have respect for her, but respected music performance nonetheless. This time round she went for the big guns and hushed us down before asking the star student to perform. The girl straight up microphone dropped her flute and said number. The teacher flipped out beyond control and ended up destroying her electronic keyboard by smashing it with her fists. Quite a sight to witness. Goddamn it, you little shoots are playing Dancing Queen again whether you like it or not. When I was in primary school at around 9 or 10, the headmaster came in holding a violin. It was school property and somebody had cracked it to the point where it was unusable. He gave a lengthy speech about respecting other people's property and how they'd now ruined it for anyone else who wanted to learn. By the end of his diatribe, he was yelling, "Someone snickered," to which he responded by smashing the violin down on the table into smithereens. A small splinter hit a kid in the eye who started crying. Headmaster gave no fricks, threw the remains on the ground, and walked out. The other would probably be when I was fighting some kid for being racist as crap towards me. Like, the worst I ever encountered. We were tussling. Teacher comes in to break it up from behind the bully. Bully elbows teacher in the face. Teacher went bright red and put the kid in a chokehold and dragged him kicking and screaming out of the classroom. I think that was technically the first fight I ever won, even though it was a technicality. Technically winning a fight is the best way to win a fight. We had a very nice, but old and repetitive, teacher that would recount the same stories over and over. We created a bingo card and distributed it among the class. We had squares for mentions dead wife, cries, talks about being a former mayor, etc. One day a doofus buddy of mine screamed bingo and the jig was up. He was crying and screaming at all of us with snot mixed in his tears and spit flying from his mouth. He quit the week after. I think about him sometimes and how we were little buttholes to a very nice man. That is so awfully sad. Our teacher was so mad that her student she was banging was taking a girl from our class to prom that she told the principal she was fricking him so they both would not be able to go. She ended up getting fired and arrested for sleeping with the student. Dang, that's dedication to lose her job. In high school we were all chatting and fooling around while we waited for the teacher. The teacher finally arrives and she had this weird 1,000-yard stare on her face. She was usually very charming and cheerful. She sits in her desk in complete silence for a moment while we continue to fool around. Suddenly she says, "Be quiet. Yesterday I had a miscarriage and I'm not in the mood to deal with you right now." It felt like an ice bomb fell on the classroom. We sat awkwardly in silence while the teacher gave her class in a weird, serious and monotone voice. After she finished her class she left without saying goodbye and we never saw her again. My English teacher, before I had her, got so mad at her class that she threw a decently heavy paperback at one of her students. She missed, but was told by administration that she needed to take anger management classes. Now whenever she gets pee, she has this creepy as frick smile on her face that screams "I love you, but I want to absolutely kill you." My 5th grade teacher had a habit of throwing erasers at her students. Many of us got whacked in the head by her flying erasers. There was a rumor going around that she moonlighted as a stripper. That could explain why she was always cranky, not enough sleep. In middle school a kid managed to put a used condom and some open ketchup packets in the pay teacher's pocket. Needless to say, when he eventually reached in his pocket and pulled out a used condom covered in ketchup, his hand and pocket as well, he was freaking pee. 5th grade, one of those troublemaker kids was, you know, being loud, disruptive, making trouble in general. Music teacher finally flips his crap, grabs the kid, and yells in his face, "Eric, I swear to God if I was your dad I would kick your freaking butt every day of your life." Class was completely silent the rest of the hour. Surprisingly not one of us told an adult. He never was reprimanded for the outburst. The kid was one of those that hadn't figured out the difference between good attention and bad attention. Was generally an annoying douche to everyone. So I can understand why he didn't say a word in that class for the rest of the year. Freaking Eric. Oh, I was sat here thinking, heck yeah, I have a great story. Miss H was a bee and then stabbings. But Miss H was a terror. She may not have stabbed anyone or thrown things in a rage, but she was a kettle constantly left on the hob, screeching at anything through the tight lips scrunched on her crimson shaded face. You could hear her from the other end of the school, because if she ever entered a room and a child was speaking and not working, she would explode. Cathartic, No, she was never relieved. It was like she was constipated, constantly trying to force out an almighty crap over the children. The other teachers would pause and roll their eyes when they heard Miss H roaring, before continuing with class as normal. I largely avoided her wrath, but still felt the cold consequences of Miss H on a few occasions. I needed to visit the toilet once, and I held my hand up and asked, "Miss H, may I please use the lavatory?" We had to call it the lavatory. Yes. She looked up to me and scowled. Number. And I spent an hour in some awful, agonizing place between pee and crying. Human rights? Huh, she loved her human rights. I had been off sick and just returned to school, so was unable to finish my lunch. Miss H stopped me before I could leave the lunch hall. "Why is there food left on your plate?" My wide eyes cowered into hers, feeding her soul the children's fear she so craved. "I feel sick, Miss H." "Then you shouldn't have taken all that food. Children in Africa would love that food and are starving because of children like you." Children in Africa were starving because of me, so I sat on the teacher's table, almost puking everywhere and full of guilt for causing famine across an entire continent. And as Miss H marched to the end of the room scoping the place for prey, one teacher on the table swapped her empty plate with mine and told me I could leave. I am still thankful today. Back in 10th grade we had an English teacher who had a rather unhealthy obsession with her dog. We'd go to class and hear about Trapper at least 4 times a week. I had her for 2 classes, so I actually got a double dose. Later that year we had a pep rally or assembly of some sorts in the gymnasium, and lo and behold there sits Trapper. She actually brought the dog to school for the assembly. This wasn't a toy dog but was a smaller breed for sure. A Schnauzer if I recall correctly. Anyways, remember making those rubber band slingshots and using half of a paperclip as ammunition? Well, 2 of the students decided it would be a brilliant idea to use these and start shooting them right at her dog. I remember being torn listening to the pooch yelp every time it got pelted, between admiration for their aim and pity for the poor beast. The teacher was confused for quite a while regarding what was happening. Then she saw one of them take aim and it hit the fan. I'm fairly certain everyone in the gymnasium heard her as she immediately flew into a rage. They most definitely noticed her face as it turned a shade of red, which somehow even managed to overpower the multiple layers of makeup she was wearing. She stormed into the bleachers and quite literally dragged both students out by their ears. I wish I could remember what punishment they received, but alas. The dog was just fine aside from some sore spots, although I can't recall another time that she ever brought it to school with her. Those students are buttholes. Maybe Trapper was the only thing in life that made her happy. God, I'm glad the teacher flipped out. I was in a Chinese government school and it was pretty hellish every day. I just returned from the UK, so being thrust into this harsh environment affected me mentally for years. Here's some crap that happened to me when I was around 8 years old. Didn't do my math homework once, so the teacher ripped apart my book in front of me and slapped me repeatedly. Classmates told the teacher about me doing bad things. They were bullying me because I had an English accent, and I couldn't understand what they were saying because I couldn't speak Chinese well. The teacher ended up canning my legs until I cried. Couldn't sing a Chinese song properly, so my teacher canned my hands until the cane broke and I got splinters. Was excited to go home after school ended, so I was running to the gate to meet my mum, but was grabbed by another teacher and canned with a leather cane for running in school. Had a stomachache during lunch, so I was in the toilet and was late for class by a few minutes. Was publicly canned for being late. Did well for all subjects except Mandarin, and whenever I got my failed results I was canned in front of my class to show what happens when you don't study enough. Had to drop my mum to the hospital for reasons and was late to class. By then, whenever someone talked to me I just couldn't respond and wanted to cry. Was sent onto the stage during an assembly and publicly canned for being late. Brought my flower pot, which I loved and grew for weeks, for a show and tell. Bullies didn't like me, so they dumped it in the trash and told the teacher that I was talking crap about them. Yeah, you can guess what happened again. Long story short, my parents eventually noticed my bruises and cuts and I was way too afraid to tell them about my suffering, because crap like that being poured on you does well to shut you up and make you fear people. Now I'm 19 and I've only just broken out of this fearful shell thanks to my best friend. About 2 years ago, my religious studies teacher in high school had her dad die of cancer, after which she took a few months off from teaching, during which we had several substitutes. When she got back to teaching in the first lesson, some of the kids in my class were loud and annoying, as classes in my school usually get when we've had nothing but barely trained substitute teachers in our class for several lessons, but a bit too much and no one was getting ready to start class activities. After about 10 minutes of loudness and no one paying attention to her or settling down to start the lesson, she snapped at us and started yelling at us about how her dad had died and how much it had affected her and how much of disrespectful shoots we were being. It was honestly the scariest few minutes in all of my high school experience, but I suppose we deserved it. There was absolutely no sound except for her for the whole time she was ranting. The noise level hardly rose again for the entirety of the lesson. Everyone felt so awful for themselves. Well, ex-post from the burn thread. We had a girl with cerebral palsy in our class who was deaf, nearly blind, mute, and wheelchair-ridden. She was intellectually sound, just in an unfortunate body. She had a sign language interpreter. One day during an assembly, our teacher caught a pair of older students making fun of her sign language, twiddling their fingers around and doing the retarded hand thing. So, we get told to go back to the classroom on our own. We think we're in serious trouble or something since we did see anything happen. Then, he comes back into the room with the kids in tow. He stands them at the front of the class and tells us what they had been doing. Then he tells us that people who make fun of others like that are not good and they do it because they've never been on the other end of it. They don't know how to empathize. That's why he brought them here. He told us we could laugh if we wanted, and many of us did. Once he made them apologize to the girl and they started crying, he led them out of the room. Justice P with a harsh reality check mixed with a burn. TL. DR. Guys made fun of handicapped classmate and friend. Teacher put them on the receiving side of ridicule to show how it isn't fun. We got to laugh at them. Back in high school, probably 1998 or 1999, a student in my Spanish class went to our teacher "Yo B get the frick off me" when she tried to get him out of his classroom. She slapped him across the face. It was bedlam. Back in high school I had a teacher named Ms. Dulin. She had a son named Ben who was arrested for dealing drugs. During class one day a friend of mine smacked the guy next to him to get his attention and in a very loud obnoxious voice said, "Watch a Ben Dulin. Drugs?" The whole class burst out laughing and the teacher ran out crying. The joke itself is hilarious, but that was a dong thing to do. In high school a woodshop teacher saw a senior boy bullying a freshman girl. She was kind of plain Jane shy kid and Mr. Thompson was not having it. He didn't say a word, just grabbed the bully by the throat and literally pushed him up the wall and stared at him. Kid's feet were a foot off the floor. Held him there about half a minute then let him drop. Mr. Thompson was a huge man with hands like a lumberjack, so this was no problem. Nothing happened to him, but this was a rural school. Same school had a geometry teacher that would knock stuff into the floor so he could bend down and look up girls' skirts he always assigned to front seats. Good old days. I had an English teacher who was an ex-Marine. Any problem students were invited into the hallway for a chat, and afterwards they were very good and well behaved. They never said what happened to them in that hallway, but very few people misbehaved when that guy was around. He was my hero. Well, it happened to me. I had a bad case of senioritis which led to the school eventually telling me if I missed any more class, I wouldn't graduate. So I started going to school regularly and one day my shop teacher marked me absent, thought I was there. I brought it up in class that he had marked me gone, with the whole class backing me up while he tried to say I wasn't there. He eventually got so mad he stood on a metal ring holding the chair's legs together to yell, "The shoot's flowing so thick, I'll just stand up here." Only he was interrupted by the metal ring busting and him eating crap. Cue the class busting up laughing as he gets up, grabs the chair and throws it across the entire shop, yelling incoherently, "Think Don Vito from Viva La Bam," at everyone. He left early that day and hated me for the rest of the year. In my junior high, the language arts teacher called one of the students up to the front of the room and stabbed him in the stomach. To be fair, the student has been fricking the teacher's wife. He was a big sturdy 14-year-old farm boy with a fairly decent beard going on. The kid was hospitalized but lived, and wound up in another school. The teacher wound up in a forensic psych unit for a while, then was released, and was never heard from again. 5th grade. Kid's name was Andy Gaskell. This kid decided to use the fire extinguisher in class. My teacher ripped this kid a new one. It was one of the most terrifying things I have ever witnessed. My teacher tolerated no crap. Teachers from other classes would send their misbehaving kids to my class so my teacher can yell at them. Andy Gaskell, Gaskell, fire extinguisher. Name checks out. In the equivalent of middle school, we had a pretty crazy teacher. He did a lot of stuff, but the turtle incident was the weirdest one. He was a natural science teacher, and don't ask me why, but one day he had brought with him 3 remote-controlled race cars and his personal pet turtle. He built long and complicated tracks for the cars, and the turtle had a short, straight line. We were going to have a turtle race. No one questioned the turtle race as it was much more fun than reading in a boring textbook and doing assignments after. And we all knew this teacher was out of his freaking mind as he previously had told us that he and his brother once found a dead cat, roadkill, and they then proceeded to take it home, boil it and then eat it. Anyway, 3 lucky students were chosen to race the cars, and our teacher laid out some kind of plant mix as bait for the turtle at the end of his line as bait. The race started, and while the cars was finishing their courses, the turtle couldn't give half a frick about the bait and was wandering in a completely different direction. One of the classmates who had been racing with the car was a really clumsy, destructive dude. He never thought about consequences at all, and he loved to make other people miserable. When he crossed the finish line, he started to tease our teacher for his crappy turtle, and the teacher got really freaking mad. This seems kind of far-fetched, I guess, but all the other kids started rooting for our classmate, and I don't know if it was the heat of the moment or if this dude is just a fricked up sociopath. But he gained some speed with his race car and just smashed it in the turtle from the side. This was a pretty tiny turtle, and a pretty powerful race car, and the turtle ended up dying. Our teacher pulled our classmate out of the room by his neck, and they was both gone for a couple of hours. At the end of the day, he told the rest of us that our teacher had boiled the turtle, and made him eat some of it. We all thought it was completely bull as this dude wasn't really reliable at all. We kind of changed opinion when the teacher was fired without an explanation about a month later. He should have built a turtle fence. A turtle fence is exactly what you would think it is. A turtle fence keeps turtles from getting hit by cars. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.